Andreas.
Hi, thanks.
Welcome to Singapore.
Thanks very much, Voon Hoe. Thank you for having me.
I hope you're enjoying yourself so far in Singapore.
Can't complain, absolutely.
Excellent. So for those of you who may not be familiar with IASB, IASB is the international standard setter of the International Financial Reporting Standards, which has been adopted as the accounting standards in many jurisdictions, including Singapore. Andreas has been the IASB chair since 2021. Let me start with the first question for Andreas. So accounting is a language that dates back thousands of years, right? And it has been used all over the world.
Right.
Over time, financial reporting has evolved in response to changes in factors such as changing stakeholders' expectation and business environments. So in your view, how has financial reporting evolved today compared to the past?
It probably depends on how far you go back. I would say the changes probably vis-a-vis the last 10, 20 years are not that pronounced, with one noticeable exception, and that is sustainability-related financial disclosures. I think for a long, long time, financial statements have been the bedrock of any investment analysis. And whether there are complaints about the financial statements being filed too late or being not holistic, I think I've seen nobody who would suggest throwing them into the bin. They just say, we probably need additional information, but please keep the financial statements as intact as they are today. So we don't hear any complaints in that regard. Are there gaps? Are there complexities? Are there some blanks that we haven't addressed? Surely they are. And as you alluded to, the environment is constantly changing, so we shouldn't be surprised to see people querying some of our standards and saying maybe that they provide a solution, but is that solution still appropriate given the current environment? But I haven't really seen anybody saying, do it entirely different to what you've done 50 years ago or so. So it is probably more the way how we present the financial statement information. There's an increasing trend to go digital and away from paper and make the financial statement data immediately available. I've already alluded to sustainability-related financial disclosures, which is an extension to traditional financial statement reporting. But no revolution as of now, I would say.
Thanks for that. I would say that you mentioned sustainability. So how does it, work in terms of the IASB interacting with the ISSB?
So we interact almost on a daily basis,
Right.
and that may surprise you because you're not seeing us.
Right.
Now, let me just rectify that. Many people think about the IASB and the ISSB working together, and what they have in mind is how we interacted with the FASB colleagues when we had the Norwalk Agreement in place some 20 years ago. So both boards sitting in the same room, discussing vigilantly certain topics and making joint decisions. Now, that's one way of connectivity and working together, but it's by no means the only way. So we have constant contact. We actually do have projects where IASB people help ISSB projects and the other way around.
I see.
But that is on a staff level, sometimes with the help of board members who act as additional internal consultants. But we have so far no joint projects. How we work together also depends largely on what principles we derive our literature from. And here we have graciously let the ISSB copy basically all of our fundamental concepts and principles. So we really work from the same ideas. We cater for the same audience, being investors in capital markets.
Right.
We work with the same fundamental principle of materiality.
I see.
We have the same idea of an accounting unit or an error. So I think these are the fundamental things that enable us to basically work from the same starting point and coming to joint conclusions. Now, how does the literature of the IASB and the ISSB relate? I could say financial statements and financial reporting is basically reporting about what has happened.
Yep.
up until the
Indeed.
reporting
Yes.
date.
Yes.
The ISSB takes on from there. So
I see.
sustainability-related disclosures are about a little bit about the past, certainly about the present, what has happened in this period, but the greatest benefit is about what may happen in the future.
I see.
So what is your strategy? What are your sustainability risks and opportunities? How do you intend to create value? How are you managing the business? What are your targets and what metrics are you using?
I see.
So it is sort of the flip side of the same coin.
I see.
So you're talking about a company. In our financial statements, you reflect on one side of the coin, and if you want to see what the strategic outlook is, you flip
see.
the side.
Sustainability.
Exactly.
I see. No, that's a very good illustration from that angle, because one of the criticism is accounting numbers are too historical, right? Not relevant for the future. So if you put in some of this sustainability stuff, then it actually extends it further.
Yeah.
Right, but without diluting what IASB has been doing.
And I think that's that's very important, because we have heard more than anything else from users, don't tinker with financial statements.
Right.
They provide us with the basis so that we can project future cash flows based on those numbers. Where we do use the sustainability-related financial disclosures is in informing us whether the timing and/or amount of our cash flow projections have to be adjusted. But if you bring those information into the financial statements, you actually make our forecast more blurry. That's something we don't want.
I see.
We want the stability coming out of the financial statements.
I see.
And we use the sustainability information to test the validity of our cash flow forecast and make necessary adjustments.
Okay, thanks for sharing that. It looks like the IASB really has its hands full. You were mentioning earlier that there were 20 over projects.
Yep.
So in fact, even in the first half of 2024, IASB has issued 2 standards, right? IFRS 18
Right.
On presentation and disclosures, which is focusing on the income statement to make it even more relevant, and IFRS 19, which looks at reducing the disclosures for subsidiaries without public accountability.
Right.
Right. So, and we also note that you have actually about, I think, 8 improvement projects, right, which will be issued in July 2024 itself. So really quite a lot of things happening. So other than these few things, what else do you have in your work plan and in your key priorities?
So we certainly still have quite a few projects. You mentioned the over 20 projects that we inherited from our predecessor board. And I'm actually quite relieved to see many of these projects coming to an end and to finalization. By this fall, the number will come down to somewhere around 15, which is far more manageable. But it also enables us to start new projects that we have committed ourselves to in the 3rd agenda consultation. Projects such as intangible assets that we have started just a month ago. A project on the statement of cash flows that we will be starting in the 3rd quarter. We do have currently an investigation whether we should be expediting our work on pollutant pricing mechanisms.
Okay.
We have reached out to national standard setters to inform us about the schemes that exist in their particular market and whether they see an increase in these transactions and whether that would inform us to actually start that project earlier than anticipated. We still have some big projects on our work plan. I would mention rate-regulated activities, which we hope to be finalizing summer next year.
Okay.
We do have the 3rd edition of the IFRS for SMEs, which is a very significant standard. I don't even know whether it applies in Singapore, but let me give you one number. There are more companies in South Africa applying the IFRS for SMEs.
Okay.
Then there are companies around the globe that are applying full IFRSs.
Wow.
Just to put this into perspective, right?
Yeah.
So there are more than 60 jurisdictions that use the IFRS for SMEs. It's hugely helpful in many emerging and developing jurisdictions and in areas where you do have a lot of private companies that you don't want to burden with the full load of disclosures that comes with full IFRSs.
I see.
So we are producing the 3rd revision of that one. We do have a project still on dynamic risk management, which seems very specialized in the banking banking sector, but it's something that the banks have asked for years. And I think our teams have come up with a very clever idea that I will take to market next summer as well. And then we do have some other, sometimes smaller targeted amendments, for instance, in the area of clarifying the equity method in its application, producing something in terms of management commentary. So we are certainly not going to be out of market and be made redundant.
I see. I'm sure you wouldn't. It sounds like a full plate. But I can't help but notice, out of all that list that you've mentioned, cryptocurrency or crypto assets is actually missing, right? And during the IASB's third agenda consultation, this was not put on the work plan. And the reason given was the existing standard, whether already allows for the accounting either as an intangible or an inventory. However, we do see that in Singapore being a finance hub, in terms of all the investments that's out there, crypto is one of the alternatives that's being considered. So there are a lot of structures being set up, and therefore there's been quite a lot of questions being asked, especially on the accounting from the perspective of the issuer. Is there anything that IASB will be doing in respect of this or putting it back into the agenda?
So not as part of this agenda consultation, which covers the period from 2022 to 26. We have agreed is that we will monitor the significance and the prevalence of cryptocurrencies all around the globe. When we made the decision not to add a project in that regard, we actually went back to the submitters who said, could you please add a project on crypto? And we asked them, how many companies in your jurisdiction that are using IFRSs do have massive holdings of crypto? And the number was? Zero.
Oh, okay.
Not a single company. Now, that's not a good test case, right? If you want to show the significance and the prevalence around the globe, it wasn't there. And in fact, many of the jurisdictions that we spoke to said, you're right, either there are balances, but these are not material. So they're not creating a financial reporting issue either for the preparer or for the auditor. Or we are talking about entities that are unlisted. And in many jurisdictions, that means they apply local GAAP.
I see.
So we simply didn't see the necessary mass to actually start acting.
I see.
Now, I also think that the point that you alluded to, namely our agenda decision that was put out that clarified that holdings of crypto either constitute an intangible asset or inventory, deals with part of the issue. Now, we still hear some unhappy voices saying, well, but the accounting that then results from that isn't always faithfully reflective. So could you please have a second look? The other part that wasn't flagged to us when we made the decision was issuer accounting that you also alluded to.
That's right.
So the question that we have there is probably deeply tied to the nature of a crypto. What we experience is that cryptos could have many different forms. There could be utilities, there could be securities, there could be other types of items. And we say we first need clarity about what's the nature of the beast. And being an international standard setter, we need clarity on the globe.
That's right.
Right. So we are currently looking to work closely with the Financial Stability Board, which is the assembly of securities regulator and central bank governors, to come forward with a definition of what do we define as crypto, token, utility, security. Once we have that clarity, we could identify where there are gaps and where we need to act. And then this may come back. Well, the next opportunity probably for us to reconsider would be the agenda consultation.
I see.
That we intend to be starting later next year.
Okay. So we look forward to that. And when you do your next outreach, do not forget the small little dot, which is Singapore, because we do have crypto, and we only have one standard, which is IFRS. So we will be very interested in terms of the accounting for cryptocurrency. Excellent. Now, earlier you mentioned about intangibles, right? This is also another area which is of interest in Singapore because we position ourselves as a hub for intellectual property and innovation in the region. So this is another area where when you look at IFRS or IAS 38, I think this standard, if I recall correctly, is almost 20 over years old.
Yes.
I still remember the days when the predecessor, I think IAS 9, that is even older.
Yeah, right.
So, and there's a lot of feedback from people that, look, the current standard does not pick up a lot of internally generated intangible assets. And hence, the value of all these assets are not reflected in the balance sheet of a lot of companies, So, and I've just heard that IASB has just issued some kind of research paper in April, which is just last month. Maybe you can share a little bit about what is the outcome and what is the objective that you're trying to achieve with this.
So, we have officially started the project. We haven't yet put out a formal document, a research paper that would summarize our findings, because it's basically the start as to how we intend to run the project. When people talk about deficiencies in intangibles accounting, many people have many different views. And the first thing that we need to understand is there a prerogative, predominant view that exists? Some people want more assets on the balance sheet. Others said only over my dead body. Some believe they should be measured at cost. Others are saying no, fair value is the truth.
I see.
Some point at disclosures. Some others said, oh no, that leads to commercial sensitivity and could give rise to legal claims. So first, getting a good understanding of what's working well, what's not working well, and where is the deficiency that we should actually look at is probably a valid point. Now, you mentioned IAS 38, and you're right, the standard is 25 years old. When it was developed in a completely different setting and with a different idea in mind, namely to bring certain kinds of research and development costs onto the balance sheet. But the standard was derived at a time where the majority of the world was still a manufacturing world.
I see.
25 years on,
indeed.
we have moved into a service-oriented world. And hence, we are seeing more and more companies not being able to see their business model reflected.
That's right,
Investors can't see how a company produces value, creates value, or depletes value. Because if you don't capitalize anything,
that's right.
You basically revert to cash accounting.
Yes.
So I think most people would share with that depiction. But when it then comes, where do you see the solution? People go into 100 different routes. So we need to see whether there is a majority way forward. And there are certainly many topics about the recognition. It starts with the problem that you can only recognize if something meets the definition of an asset. If something is an asset, you must have control over it. And that is where many of the intangibles currently falter. The next problem that we would have to tackle once we get the things on the balance sheet is, how on earth do we find a measure for them?
Yes.
I mean, it may be possible if you go by cost, but cost often is negligible. So should we go for value? But then the same questions arise as to many financial instruments that don't have a market value, and you have to model something, right? I could also already see the headlines on some newspapers. IASB allows for accounting scandals to happen or make up earnings, right? So surely we don't want that. Then the question about presentation, is our breakdown sufficient that we do have at the moment? I don't hear that many concerns. And lastly, obviously, disclosures. They do have their role as well. So I think a lot of nuts to crack. I think to address all of the issues will probably take a good 10 years.
Wow, okay.
Right.
I see.
And we don't want to wait to bring some of the benefits to the market much sooner. So we probably will slice and dice the project.
I see.
But if you do that, you want to be reasonably assured that some decisions that you have made in the early phase are not being overwritten in the later phase. So you have to have something that is robust and can stand on its own.
Thanks for that, Andreas. It sounds like intangible assets is going to be one of those complex standards, and who will become even more complex as you revise it. And the reality is, you hear a lot of people saying that today the accounting standards are already too complex. And, even some analysts are saying they cannot understand nor interpret some of the numbers that are actually being generated. And we know that IASB has already done a lot to help with the understanding. It comes out with things like snapshots, project summaries, feedback statements, lots of podcasts and articles by the IASB members. Is there anything else that IASB can do to help people understand these complex standards better?
Well, if you have a good idea, I'm always open to hear it and steal it from you. I think there's probably little that we can do, honestly, because intangibles is a complex material. Right? You cannot just say, okay, let's keep it completely simple and just have 2 paragraphs about something that inherently is complex. I think if users are looking for just the right number and want to understand that number without the context that has led to producing that number, I think there's little that we can do to help people. So I think this is really where it all comes together. You want to see the number, you need the explanation and the breakdown of that number in the notes, and you probably even need more further explanatory material, for instance, in management commentary or in sustainability-related disclosures, because some of these issues may stray into the sustainability arena. If you think about a continuum that goes from intangible asset over intangible items, intellectual property, intellectual capital, human capital, you see that you flip somewhere from the financial reporting side into the sustainability arena. So if you really want to have a solid understanding of how it all fits together, one number will never give you the entire story.
So I guess it's the same for a number of other standards, right?
Yeah.
Complex business require complex standards, right?
Well,
you can't have a simple rule and then you can cover everything.
Is that I would probably go with that depiction, because I don't think that we would justify a complex area with necessarily complex standards, right?
Okay.
We still have to try our best to actually make it as simple as possible.
Yeah, but it's just not possible, right, in some cases.
So, and I mean, I alluded to dynamic risk management, right?
Right.
I mean, hedge accounting and hedging is very, very complicated.
Yep, indeed.
So, I mean, and given that it is complicated, there is no way that we could just say, oh, give me the debits and credits and we are done.
Exactly.
Right? So, and in that regard, I think you're right.
But in today's world, Andreas, everybody is talking about ChatGPT, large language models, AI. Is there any way that AI can help, make accounting or financial reporting easier to understand?
I'm not sure whether there is a role or not. So what we have at the moment is the use of AI in developing standards. We use AI, for instance, to go through comment letters and search for keywords.
Okay.
When the ISSB did their agenda consultation, they received 1,400 letters.
Okay.
There's no way that a human being could digest that within 2 weeks or so. With the use of AI, you can look for certain phrases, for certain topics, and actually bucket those. Somebody would still have to test that and verify those, and probably if they want further explanation, further information, have to go down deeper, and that is something that still has to be done manually.
I see.
But the pre-selection can be done with the help of AI. Also, we are using AI to promulgate our literature in an increasing way in other languages than English.
I see. Okay.
Right? There are parts of the world where the proficiency of English is less than 5%. So it's great that we're producing snapshots and webcasts and all the other materials, yet we're only doing that in English.
I see.
So how do we reach the larger audience? By translating, but we are not a translation company.
I see.
But we could use AI to help, right?
So you don't see a chat IASB coming out anytime soon?
I don't think so.
Where anyone is going to be able to have, ask a few questions, like which is the applicable standard? How do we apply it? And then the answer will come out,
Probably not, because these large language models need data that enables it to be trained.
Yes.
right?
Indeed. Yeah.
So as long as the data is unstructured, the large language models will not produce sensible outcomes. It's more or less a hit and miss. Sometimes it will produce a quite good answer, but in other occasions, it will completely miss the point.
Okay.
So you still need structure. This is where actually our taxonomy is so important, where we say if you take the information, it gives structure into the system, and that structure could then be used to actually feed the AI models, the large language models, and become more robust.
Okay.
But if you took one of a particular case that hits your technical department, so a client question, for instance, and say, this is the fact pattern, ChatGPT, write me an answer on that one.
I see.
You cannot be assured that they will have the answer right in the majority of cases, I'm afraid.
I think that's very comforting for me to know as an accountant, because if you look at certain studies, they are talking about accounting is is one of those professions that is like 90% chance of being replaced. But what I'm hearing is like maybe some of the collation, preparation, AI can potentially replace it. But when it comes to accounting interpretation, accounting application, that is something that is not easy to replace.
I absolutely agree with that. I mean, in the end, the majority of our work is making judgment calls.
Yes.
Right?
Indeed.
Distinguishing the light gray from the dark gray. Now, the AI can help. They cannot substitute, but they can help in actually producing a rough shot or a raw answer.
Yes.
But I think it needs verification. We are not yet at the stage where we can say we can really trust whatever the verdict of ChatGPT or other models is.
Indeed. So what about, we've talked about the past, we've talked about the present. How about, how will standard setting look like in the future? Maybe in 10 years' time,
I don't know whether AI will have progressed significantly during that time, but certainly we will make increasing use of AI in our standard setting process. We will try to utilize that, not in order to have less staff, but to use our staff more efficiently and more for the things where really their brain power is needed. Okay. So everything that goes into reproduction or into analysis or things like that, probably if we can skip that and put that into the AI camp, desktop reviews, for instance, that will be very helpful so that we then could, as staff, concentrate on the real development of the standards. In terms of other areas, what I'm hoping to see in 10 years is that sustainability reporting standards have matured to the same degree as financial reporting has. Yes. There is a lot of hype at in the moment about sustainability reporting, and rightly so. But I think we shouldn't be forgetting that we had several hundred years of training.
Yes, indeed.
Right?
Yeah.
You can't just go overnight to the same degree of robustness and efficiency. Many of the companies that we are talking to are now trying to bring sustainability reporting into the finance center, because this is where processes, controls, and systems exist.
Yep.
But in order for those to become sufficiently mature and robust so that people can actually rely on the information that's being produced coming out of these systems, it will take time. And I know that many people don't like to hear that, but this is just a fact. But once we do have that maturity, and whether it's in 5 years and 10 years or 15 years, I think there will be a time to think about, do we really need two pillars, financial reporting and sustainability reporting? Yes. Or does it make more sense to actually combine the two?
Indeed,
and actually think about holistic corporate reporting?
I see. Yeah, integrated reporting, right? There's some
it could be.
concepts on
It
that
could.
And so
Yes,
on.
It could be integrated reporting. That is one way of corporate reporting, but certainly not in a fragmented way, silo based, right? But really looking at it holistically.
Thank you, Andreas, for your amazing insights. As we end, any final message for our audience?
Keep up the good work. I was very glad to hear that everything is IFRS in Singapore.
Yeah.
Continue to be a loyal customer. do give your views. Do give your input to our consultations. We read everything. Okay. Rest assured, there is no small country, big company, small company, big company. We read everything, and the best ideas help us to actually propel. So Thanks very much for having me today.
Thank you, Andreas, for your amazing insights once again.